by music. Stand by now.
3, 2, 1.
And fade up.
It's the Bellagio, the Mirage, and the MGM Grand.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Mike Wazowski.
Open your eyes.
Now tell me, where are the others?
Eat me!
King Kong ain't got on me!
What about second breakfast?
Why not? Why can't I?
How can we be expected to teach children to learn how to read if they can't even fit inside the building?
Welcome to another episode of 20 Years for Beers, a podcast dedicated to rewatching popular films from 2 decades ago, while also enjoying 4 modern beers. My name is Steve, and this is my big brother,
Tim.
And we are coming to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota. On this episode, we venture for the first time into the world of true science fiction with 2001's AI Artificial Intelligence.
How can the blue fairy make a robot into a real live boy?
We have done some fantasy films and like the superhero, we did X-Men,
Sure.
but not, this is the first, this is a sci-fi film through and through.
Hardcore
Futuristic sci-fi.
Yep.
AI is a film about a robotic boy who is programmed to love, named David. David is adopted and gradually accepted into the family of 2 grieving parents, but through an unfortunate series of events, he winds up being cast away by his family and abandoned in the wilderness. David embarks on a journey to discover where he truly belongs, uncovering a world in which the line between robot and human is both vast and profoundly thin.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Took me a while. The film is written and directed by Steven Spielberg and stars Haley Joel Osment, Jude Law, Francis O'Connor, and William Hurt. I can go on for a while about this, so I'm going to let you go
You're
first.
so
Do you have any
excited.
memories or anything like that?
Spielberg's one of the directors that it's like, for the most part, whatever he puts out, it's on a list of gotta go see it. And this was definitely one of those at the time, especially as it was him taking over after Kubrick died. It was all the intrigue and interest of like, how are these styles gonna mesh or whatever it is. And so yeah, I remember seeing it. I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater. I don't know that I remember enjoying it or being blown away. I just remember seeing it, which is a weird thing. Now I'm excited to see it again because it's easily been 18 years. I remember it felt slow at times and the effects were really cool. But no, I just, I don't have, I think, the recollection of it that I'm sure you do. So
Sure.
Yeah, I remember seeing it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this movie definitely hit on a deeper level for me when I saw it multiple times. I do think looking back on it, excuse me, as I was thinking about it, I think it was really one of the first times being challenged in a movie to think of it from a philosophical standpoint, like a who we are,
Sure.
as what makes you human, what makes what makes us us, like
Sure.
in comparison to a robot, or could you program a robot to be a human?
Sure.
There's a lot of movies like Memento and Seven and some of these other movies that are like psychological thrillers that make you think your way through it.
Sure.
But not a lot of deep movies like this, I think. At least not when we weren't seeing them if they were out there.
That's true.
So I'm sure they're out there, but I just didn't watch them.
No.
For me, it was like the what is my purpose style of storytelling. It was a gateway for me into like Blade Runner and other, because I hadn't seen it at that point, I don't think.
That's true.
And other films that feature human-like robots. I just think it really was, visuals are good. It was an interesting gateway into sort of this, and I was always a Spielberg fan as well, and I have been. He's my favorite, but like that's where I look back on it. I'm like, oh yeah, that introduced me to, because you and I have very negative feelings about the original Blade Runner.
I have changed.
I respect
since then.
it,
Yes.
but I don't love that movie.
Yes.
But I love this movie. But for me, it's been at least a decade since I've seen it.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting for me. I'm nervous it won't hold up
Sure.
for me.
Sure.
Because we've talked off air. I wrote a paper on this, and I wrote like thesis papers almost on this in college, and both on its ties to film, but also to Christian themes, to Pinocchio, to all this stuff. So I think I definitely have a deeper feeling of it. So we'll see.
I'm excited to see how it holds up or what the 20 years has been like. So
yeah, and we've seen in other films like how, does this hit different now than it did back then, especially with David being a kid.
Yes.
So our first real segment then is Drinking Buddies.
Come on, not my fucking beer.
Where Tim takes us through our 4 beers, or our drinking buddies, that accompany us through the film. We are recording this on Father's Day, so I'm led to believe there is a theme beer as well. So Tim, please take us through our drinking buddies.
So excited here. We've got our drinking buddies tonight. One is from Fulton, from Minneapolis. It's a new one that they've released just recently. Just IPA is what it's called. Their India Pale Ale. No nonsense as it should be. So I'm kind of curious to see. It seems like it's trying to be like a very old school original style of IPA.
Or like Stone IPA. I wonder if it's just like a... That's what Stone is. It's just Stone IPA.
Just IPA. So I'm curious about that. And then, yes, we do have our theme beer. Less movie related, but theme of the day. Again, I'm recording this on Father's Day. From Blackstack Brewing in Minneapolis. Their triple dry hopped double IPA, lovingly referred to as Dad Jokes.
So such a random name.
I know, I saw it. I was like,
a beer. You're like, okay.
We got to do that. And then we have War Pigs Brewing out of Illinois, I think. I didn't even look beforehand.
Yeah, Chicago, I think.
Yeah, that area. Their Bouffant Jellyfish American Sour Ale with passion fruit and pink guava. I'm very excited about that. And then Lupulin out of Big Lake, Minnesota. Their Citradiculous. That's what it is. Citradiculous. Their Citra hopped double IPA. So that's our run tonight.
It's rare for us to have like one hop.
Yeah. Like a single hop IPA.
Everything lately is like 100 different hops in it.
And I'm not going to maybe bring attention to it, but we're going to see it's our first bottle.
Oh, you get the sound.
It did have a little bit of a effervescence.
I'll still cut it out. So, or I'll go find like I'll find a YouTube video of like over exaggerated one, and I'll put that in there. Yep. So actually, that brings us to our next segment, which is the social network.
If you guys were the inventors of Facebook, you'd have invented Facebook.
Our look back at the reviews or reactions from the time, both good and bad. Tim will obviously have Ebert.
Yep.
I have one. I'll go first, and you can do yours because then you'll go into the awards. I have Ian Nathan of Empire Magazine says, quote, perplexing, infuriating, mind-blowing. It's a voyage into a wonderland where the fairy tale motif becomes inseparable from the cool future vision. You've got to admire Spielberg's daring, ditching the intellectual backbone for a spiritual send-off, but it doesn't sit easy. AI will have you debating until the landlord threatens to call the police. It's that kind of movie. Thank God for that.
Whoa.
And it was 3 out of 4, I think, was how it averaged out.
Wow.
It's always hard to tell because on Metacritic or whatever, they're like 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I was like, yeah, there you go.
That's
a movie that makes you debate.
Well done. I'm excited for that for our high fidelity segments. IMDb rating is 7.2 out of 10, which I thought was kind of low, but that's what it is.
I thought so too, but then I was like, movies like this that, one, make you think the way through it.
That's true.
It's slow moving, which we've come to appreciate more.
Yes.
I think. But I was a little bit like, no, that's about
right.
But it's higher than I think the Metacritic score and Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
So.
Peter Rainier, I'm not sure, of New York Magazine said the film is temperamentally, Spielberg and Kubrick are such polar opposites that AI has the moment-to-moment effect of being completely at odds with itself. A.O. Scott of New York Times said it's the best fairy tale, the most disturbing, complex, and intellectually challenging boys' adventure story that Mr. Spielberg has ever made. And again, Big Man Roger, 3 out of 4 stars, said a movie both wonderful and maddening. So I'm curious to see how that, again, kind of gets fleshed out here. Then for Academy Awards, was nominated for 2 that year for best visual effects, which I do remember at the time, like, not being surprised by, like, the practical effects and the CGI stuff they had. Like,
yeah, but that would have lost to probably the Lord of the Rings, I would assume.
I'm sure it did.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
and speaking of lost to Lord of the Rings, also was up for best score for John Williams, also that same year for Harry Potter that we covered. So he was up twice in that same category that year, then eventually losing out to Howard Shore for Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring.
there we go.
There we are.
So, I guess without any more pomp or circumstance
Let's
from
do
me, so we have released in 2001 by Warner Brothers and DreamWorks. Here is AI, Artificial Intelligence.
Do not be fooled by the artistry of this creation. No doubt there was talent in the crafting of this simulator. Yet with the very first strike, you will see the big lie come apart before your very eyes!
Don't burn me! Don't burn me! I'm not Pinocchio! Don't make me die! I'm David! I'm David! I'm David!
Mecha, don't plead for their lives! Who is that? He looks like a boy!
Built like a boy to disarm us. See how they try to imitate our emotions now? Whatever performance this sim puts on, remember, we are only demolishing artificiality.
Well, welcome back to 20 Years, 4 Beers, where we have just finished AI, Artificial Intelligence, as well as 4-ish new beers. As usual, we actually just jump right into our reaction segment, which we call High Fidelity.
Top 5 side ones, track ones.
Where Tim and I discuss our top 5-ish takeaways or reactions from rewatching AI. Do you have any initial thoughts that you would want to...
I might struggle with just a top 5.
Really?
Well, in terms of this, it was a very profound movie.
Yeah. Yeah, initial reactions, not even top 5, just initial reactions.
Like, I remember the time feeling like it was super pretentious when I saw it the first time.
Sure.
Like, I was like, oh my God, like, that's crazy philosophical, like, existential questions at, like, the last half hour, 40 minutes or whatever. And just be like, oh my gosh, what the hell is going on? Very different now. Very, like, much more profound experience than pretentious, so.
Huh.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess diving right in, my first takeaway was I was struck by how the opening scene was so important to the entire movie without remembering it. Because when it first started, we thought it was silent and was the speaker working or not?
Yeah.
And it opens up and it's William Hurt talking to these company people or his employees or whomever, and they start down this moral existential question about robots and what makes them a robot, what gives you a soul, almost like what makes you human, what
does existence mean?
Yeah, and you're like, I didn't realize it at the time, but now I'm thinking, man, you got 2.5 hours and it starts with the question.
Yes.
It doesn't get you to the answer or the question like halfway through, and it literally starts with the questions of like the moral question.
Yeah.
Of, and can a human love something that's non-human unconditionally?
Yeah.
You want to say, yeah, you can, but at some point everything breaks and you get rid of it.
Yes.
I can love it unconditionally in the moment until it's broken, and then you discard it.
Yes.
Loving another human being, if they're broken, you still accept them. You still want to. I mean, it's just that idea of it's the moral question, and it's in the first 5 minutes.
Yes.
I was struck. I was just like, oh, here we go. I forgot about that scene. Excuse me.
Well, is it is it called the Turing test or whatever, where they talk about an ex machina, where like you can't disassociate the fact that if something is like a machine or whatever, you always will know that.
Right.
And some kind of artificial intelligence or some of that will pass the Turing test when people don't recognize it. That it'll pass our ability, or even if you do know it, you don't believe it.
Right.
Like it's so much of a facsimile for real existence.
So
like that idea for this right away comes out with the question of like, if you know that, can you love something? Or if the whole intent of this thing is to build robots that can love unconditionally a human, what about the reverse of that? So yeah, it was really cool right away having that question of like, this is what the movie's going to ask you. Like, can it create enough empathetic, sympathetic, challenging scenarios across the board that you might be able to recognize or understand? Can that ever happen? Yeah, it was.
Well, even the most hateful people towards robots were in defense of David at the Flesh Fair.
Yes.
So, I mean, at some point, obviously, yeah, you can do that.
Yes.
But, man, yeah. I think there's just so many layers to this that you just don't even know where to start. But that was wasn't even my first takeaway. I have many takeaways.
Yes.
I joked after the movie before we recorded. I've never taken this many notes in a movie.
Yeah, you were jotting down a lot.
Ever. Yeah, I have a lot.
Meanwhile, I got like my first 5 and like the first half, and I'm like, I'm just going to watch the rest and see how I process this.
That's good. It means you liked it.
I did, actually. I thoroughly was confounded at times, enjoyed it. It's got some challenges that I'm like, but overall, I was very impressed with it again. More so than I remember it when I first saw it. Again, I think I expected something different when I first saw it, like Spielberg, and this would be really interesting, and I don't know that I was prepared at 20 years old to really comprehend like the philosophical, existential.
Yeah, because he's been nothing but entertainment.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, short of Schindler's List and Amistad, and even then, though, those are still movies that are somewhat, they bring out an emotion in you.
Yes.
And this is more
cerebral.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely.
Not prepared for that with Spielberg.
No, it was definitely a kind of a different take. So,
and I know we had seen it, but like we have a better appreciation of Close Encounters now. But like this is the Spielberg of Close Encounters, right? Of that cerebral sci-fi.
Yes.
So anyway,
takes the time. So my first thing watching it again was at the beginning the reflective surface and like beveled glass motif when David first comes to their home as this, boy to be or whatever, is a really cool device in that it's the idea of, at least I saw it, of like perceiving things that are like inherently a replica of something else, where it creates kind of an odd perception of a person. So it's not like a true image of it. It's like through this glass and it's distorted. And it's not necessarily the true picture of it, which was such a genius way to show, I think, from a narrative standpoint, like arguably these parents are replacing their child who's in a coma and who may never awake. And so it is a really cool way to show like it's not the real thing. It is a reflection of something that's going to meet a need, and it's odd, it's kind of jarring with these reflections everywhere and through this glass, almost like through a looking glass type of thing, like Alice in Wonderland. So it was a really cool way to start it, of him coming in and having it see through the audience. Like this just isn't just a traditional kind of movie where it's just let's take some shots. Like it was seeing him in so many ways in a reflective surface or through a beveled glass. And I was like, this is a pretty cool style. I thought it was really, really cool of showing this is not like, it's going to be a replica of something. So anyway, it was cool.
Yeah. The feel the need is an interesting statement too, of saying at one point early on, even in the scene I was talking about, they talk about how the lover robots exist and they feel a need.
Yes.
And then he makes the argument that they don't, he's trying to recreate humanity. That would have filled his need, right, as a parent to have his son back. So it's interesting. And so David sort of is feeling a need. It's just not one that he, you want to go into the existential argument. But
yeah, the creator makes David, William Hurt makes David as to meet his need.
Right.
But then wants to see him go out in the world and be like, what does his adventure look like? It's going to meet other people's needs and this control. Like,
it's crazy. Yeah. So many layers.
It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah,
that was a cool way to start. For like just the style of it was a cool motif.
I guess I don't know about next thing. I mean, really, the number one thing that stood out to me, I'll cover later. But it's it's interesting to me, even actually often in movies about robots or aliens or unhuman things, the best sort of social commentary comes out.
Sure.
Of saying how we treat these inhuman things is actually how we're treating those we disagree with.
Anything we see less than.
Right, or we fear.
Yeah, true,
even.
Yeah.
And so, from a social commentary standpoint, obviously 20 years ago is not now, but you do see, like, that we fear or do not know, we shun or kill or leave at the border or whatever.
Yes.
And it's really interesting. So the flesh fair thing, to me, I just had like kind of I was really impressed by that whole scene of just that exact thing. We are treating these inhumane things in inhumane ways, or inhuman things in inhumane ways. Westworld, the TV show, talks a ton about this.
Yes.
And this is 18 years before that came out, and the TV show. So the social commentary thing to me was really interesting.
Yeah, the Flesh Fair where they round up these robots and bring them in to be destroyed in front of, a ravenous audience of destroying them. It definitely had hints of the thinking. I totally thought the same thing of Westworld, the TV show, which is fantastic. If you haven't watched it, it's fantastic. But it is the whole thing of they built this entire park to satisfy the whims of people and had these lifelike robots designed to meet the needs in so many ways, and the humans in the park are awful. They're just awful to these things that they see less than them. So yeah, it was really jarring in that. I'll come back to the Flesh Fair because that's a bit of my hot take, but okay. I love you mentioned that, because one thing I liked about from a human experience and kind of, again, social commentary on humans, my second thing was I loved that Spielberg obviously directed, but also wrote it, and he does a really good job of taking these tiny things that are built together when David is in the house at the beginning for the first 40 minutes or so, that make it understandable and a really empathetic decision for why the mother Monica would finally decide to get rid of him. It's not like huge
not
deal
just
breaker.
Get rid of him, but not kill him.
Yes.
To
Exactly. And I'll come to that.
Him. Sorry.
Yes. So what is interesting to me is these tiny things are results of him reacting to how mean the humans around him are.
Correct.
So the brother, Martin, being a complete a-hole.
Yeah.
But in some ways justifiably coming back from a coma being like, what is this kid doing
you've
here?
replaced me.
Yeah.
Yep.
What the processing has to be, no pun intended, for this human to work through this. Yeah, he's going to probably test these boundaries. And so he's doing terrible things, and David's just going along with it. And then you see him with the friends, and there are all these reflections of how humans can be awful to these things that are seen as less than. And then to the scene where, she is going to get rid of him, but then decides, I can't have him be destroyed. I need to leave him in the woods and have him experience whatever's going to be out there. And that scene was just heartbreaking to watch. Him, pleading.
No, Mommy, please, no, please, no.
They would destroy you, David.
Mommy, I'm sorry I broke myself. I'm so sorry I cut your hair off, and I'm sorry I hurt you.
No,
Mark, and
I have to
and
go. I
Stop,
have
no.
to go. Stop it!
Sorry.
Stop.
I have to go. Mommy, no. Mommy, if Pinocchio became a real boy and I become a real boy, can I come home?
That's just a story.
It's a story. Tell us what happens.
Stories are not real.
None of them, Mommy, is real.
Yeah. Pleading for her to not...
I can take it, but it is, I agree, of saying, don't leave me. I can be real if you want me to be, and begging and pleading and just, doing whatever you want, and that goes to the whatever. What was the when he did get it poked by the friend.
Yeah, like the
defense mechanism. I can't remember what it was.
Like DOS and so
or
whatever.
Yeah, the DOS. Right,
Yes.
the defense automated system.
Yeah,
is that like also emotional? Like, you know, are they programmed to then act in such way? And probably are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I agree. I think that scene alone humanizes them to a certain extent too.
Yeah, it's like the whole like seeing a child plead like that was just
But again,
it's devastating.
Child or not child, right?
Yes.
It is that idea which,
and I know he's not real.
Right.
I'm watching his audience like but it's again the experience of putting yourself in that shoe of how David is very robotic until he realizes she's leaving.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And then it's his first human reaction. And that was really hard to see. So it's good. It's good. Okay.
I think yeah, I guess I'll go so you were talking about how I had that too, just saying that it does a really good job and it sneaks up on you because we watched Pearl Harbor, which was 3 hours long, right?
Yeah.
And it felt like 9 hours long. Yes. And so this movie is 2 hours and 25 minutes or so, 2.5 hours. It does not feel like 2.5 hours. Mm-mm. To me, it didn't.
We paused the first 35 minutes to get the second beer. We're like, half an hour's passed? Holy cow, it's flown by.
It does. I think for me, I agree. Just sort of saying that it did a great job of, you couldn't go too far into making him human at that point.
Yes.
Because then she's literally leaving a human child out into the wilderness.
Yes.
And that makes her a terrible person.
Yes.
But I was struck by, I guess for me, it's not my point, but it's just off of yours. It was like, that's how we treat like a dog, right?
Yeah.
Or a dog will be there in love and loyal because they want to, and then even if you hurt them,
the unconditional.
Right. It's that weird sort of, I don't know. But they did a great job of building and building and building without it being suspenseful. You knew at some point the journey had to happen.
Yes.
But how you get there, and she had to love him enough.
Yeah.
To let him go, because she loved him really, she would have kept him.
Yes.
But so she didn't love him unconditionally.
Yes.
There were conditions to this.
Yes.
But yeah, to your point of saying all of David's reactions were simply because of humans' insufficiencies and insecurities.
Yes.
So David responds off that.
Yes.
Like a computer would.
Yes.
But yeah,
but I can see it's super empathetic and or understandable for Henry and Monica eventually to be like, he might harm our child.
Right.
We just got him back.
Because he's not real.
Exactly. And so again, yes. Yeah. So it's not like I don't see them as terrible people.
No.
It's just it's like the whole Pandora's box of
right.
He brought him home thinking it would help Monica in some way, not fully realizing this is not going to work, man. And,
but he also thought it was going to help her, but also it was kind of a career decision.
Maybe.
My company has trusted me on this, so I kind of gotta.
That's true.
Typical man.
I know.
I guess my next point really was that I remember thinking, because Jude Law was up for a Golden Globe for supporting actor for this, and I remember thinking like, really? At the time, even, and I love this movie. We've established that, but I was like, watching this again, like, holy cow! I mean, I think Jude Law, I suppose he's my James Marsden to you. I was just saying, like, anything he's in, I just am drawn to him. He's so good in this. He's a great guide into this real world because we don't meet him till an hour into the film.
Yeah,
and David, his mother Monica says, "I'm sorry I didn't introduce you to the real world."
Yes.
Or of the
Tell
world.
you about the world, yes.
Right. And then cut to, like, Joe.
Yes.
Now he's we don't know about the world
it's very,
that's around
like,
here.
What is
so
happening?
Joe is our guide into this world as well.
Yes.
And that's where the Westworld comparisons came into me.
Totally.
Of that sort of understanding of, I've been created to do this, but guess what? We're going to be here when you're long gone.
Yes.
You know, and so that Outlast thing, I thought Jude Law was outstanding in this.
I literally wrote down, one of my points was, it only makes sense that when they were casting what male actor would be designed to be essentially perfect, Jude Law is going to be top of that list.
Yeah.
I was like,
in the late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, he was definitely up and coming and establishing himself of, like, a very solid actor.
Yeah.
And a beautiful man. And so I just love that, like, oh, yeah, he's going to be Gigolo Joe. And, you know, he is a gorgeous man and very well cast as far as he can portray that empathy that you need to have, knowing he's still a robot, but, you know, the lover robots or whatever they have. But his first interaction is with a woman who is being abused.
Yeah.
And he is, again, so fantastic as helping her work through that and being okay with her worries and her fears and everything. It was a cool scene. And then by extension, yes, when he sees David at the Flesh Fair and gets kind of wrapped up in his world, he's like, great, okay, you're getting me out of here. It's definitely a means to an end, but it doesn't feel like a stretch.
Right.
That he would help this boy through this world, be his kind of, you know, guide through it. And so it was a cool casting choice because he does a really good job of just being, well, yeah, I could see this woman would want him, but he is such an, like, he's a very caring individual that comes across. So yeah, Jude Law was one of my things as well. He's fantastic. He's so good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, do you want to go?
That was my
yours?
fourth. Yeah.
I guess.
Love it. Or my third one.
Yeah, I don't really have this written down because we'll probably rant about other things, but I was surprised at how probably 90% of the visuals still hold up.
Totally.
Like, really,
yeah,
really good. Teddy alone,
yes,
which I assume is probably 75% digital all
Yes.
the way. Some of the up close stuff isn't.
Yeah, there's practical effects. Yes,
I was, and what was interesting is at the time I remember the close up ones were like really well thought of,
Yes.
like when the face opens up and stuff.
Yes,
those didn't hold up as well, and the aliens at the end were never that great. But
no.
They were never great at the time, but
Yes.
they weren't bad.
Yes.
They're still not bad. But everything else, I mean, really impressive.
Yes.
The moon,
Yeah.
like that moon balloon thing
Yes.
or whatever, is still really good.
Yes.
The one that looks like Close Encounters, by the way.
It does.
And when it comes over the
hill. Yes.
Yeah, I was really struck at not only the visual effects, but the visuals of the shots were really good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Janusz Kaminski is great. The details of Jude Law, this is where it came to, is of like kicking his head to the left or whatever and turning on the music.
Yes.
Just the detail of all of the visuals on this, still top notch.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's amazing to see it now, and I guess I wouldn't be surprised, like, you know, Spielberg coming from Jurassic Park, the practical effects with CGI kind of laid the groundwork for everything to come after as far as that. But you think about the tangible experience, or the tactile, I should say, the experience of the world they live in is really, really well done. Like the sterile environment at the beginning that feels so kind of just perfect and untouchable. And then, so yeah,
and rich, right? Like, obviously the wealthy have this world.
Exactly.
That
very, very affluent.
Yeah, without having to talk about it.
Yes. And the cool car they drive or whatever. But that was one of my points too, is that, you know, what the mother, and she's, you know, she says, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the world. What comes after that when he goes into the Flesh Fair in Rouge City?
The Rouge City is impressive.
It's so jarring.
Yep.
But the world, like the fair, this, like the one single shot where the guy brings Teddy to the Lost and Found and walks on the rafters. And you can see this the set they built to be this kind of arena thing. It comes down the other side, and then behind them is the cage where the moon was there, and like the Brendan Gleeson's character is there, like in a passing shot. That's fantastic. Like that kind of effect is so great because it balances out the clearly kind of digital work that they do to build this world.
Yeah, the production design sort of gets short shrifted a little bit.
Yeah.
There's some really good production design.
Exactly. And like when the robots come to this dumping ground and start repairing themselves with like the leftover parts
too.
Yeah. It's terrible that it's left them out there.
Yeah.
But then when Rouge City that's good. Rouge City feels like, you know, kind of a Blade Runner homage in many ways. Like it's really not as dark and dreary, but well lit and kind of the lines. But
no, it's neon above and like dirt below.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. So yeah, I love that feeling and such a juxtaposition of the clean and sterile world that David was initially in, and then what came after. And it was the thing that was kind of profound of like when she was talking about protecting from the world. Having 2 kids now young, it definitely was like hit me as far as like, what we're trying to do to like keep the world at bay as long as possible kind of thing, like with technology and everything. It was really cool. Just that one line, and then what came after was I could see why she would try and protect him because it's just terrible in many ways, but still not. I don't know. It wasn't awful
in that sense. Like, it was a little more Spielbergian than anything else.
Yeah.
Because even with Ready Player One, the world is not near as bad as it is in the books.
True.
I mean, I think in some ways, that's the only time I would ever allow people to say, like, because, you know, this was not a dark Schindler's List style movie. I think Spielberg didn't want the sort of really darkness to it.
Yeah.
Speaking for him, that's where I think sometimes he does maybe bring it not all the way there.
Yeah.
But, so it's not bad. It's not like they're walking through the streets and terrible things are happening around them.
No.
But in some ways, that's on purpose, right? Like, the bad stuff is what robots do.
Yes.
In rooms and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So, but no,
I mean, it's the whole, like, take on the whole thing is largely a fairy tale. Type of thing. So it can't be... Even though Brothers Grimm's were pretty terrible, but like it can't be that terrible in terms of like off-putting to the audience.
Yeah, even Pinocchio wasn't that great. No, the story they were talking about was burning Pinocchio in this.
Yes,
like okay,
Yikes.
Fairy tales I think have they're a little rosy colored.
Yes, they're kind of taint. Yeah. Anyway,
okay. Was that playing off of mine?
That was playing off yours,
ahead.
but it was one of mine actually. So it was a good playoff. So that was my 4th one.
I mean, I guess I have like 10 more. So I get I said it before, and I was writing this down as I went to remember why I wrote about this for Christianity class.
Sure.
I was just saying, like, you know, I remember pitching it to my teacher at the time, and he hadn't seen it because this was right around, it was 2001 it came out.
Yeah.
Obviously pre 9/11 because the 2 towers were still in the later
2,000
scenes, 2,000 years later.
Yes.
And he hadn't seen it, and so I was like pitching it about my idea, and it was like there are some seriously spiritual themes in it of saying how to deal with grief without faith, because this family is if you don't have a faith in afterlife or whatever, you've got this grief of, you know, it's hard. That's hard.
Well, the doctor talks about at the beginning, like, it's been 5 years.
5 years.
And
this kid's been in cryo.
Yes. Hasn't worked through the grief. Yes.
Right. Searching for our maker, journeys towards acceptance. Quote, the ones who made us, the ones who made us are always searching for the ones that made them. Like this idea, Jude Law says it to, outside of that church.
Yes.
And he says it to David.
Yes.
Like this idea that is, obviously they're searching for him.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, belief that it's something higher, or a belief in something higher that actually winds up being true. Praying at the end, he prays to the blue fairy, like, essentially.
Yeah.
The whole time. Yeah, I just think you end up, at the end, he ends up in this place where dreams are born, aka heaven. I mean, you just end up in this place where I remember thinking at the time, oh, it's a natural thing. And I had to like fight with it for people because people hadn't seen it.
Sure.
And I'm watching it now and I go, it was actually a pretty easy paper to write. Because if you cross that with other references I can't think of right now, I wouldn't say they're intentional. I mean, Spielberg is a religious person.
Sure.
But I do think it's somewhat unintentional. But that's also a commentary maybe on our human existence and that kind of stuff of going through the world. But to me, the spiritual themes are through and through.
Yeah.
Of just that, especially that search for a home. Like that sort of, in the end, all he wanted to do was go home and be with his mom.
Yep.
Like that was it. And yeah, he was programmed to do it. But then in theory, aren't we all programmed to do that?
Yes.
If you are a believer, you are programmed to do that. I don't know.
That's
a deeper thought. But that was the number one thing. I was watching the entire way through. Like, was I crazy to write this paper? I know I got an A on it, but I'm just like, was I crazy to do this or what?
Well, the doctor talks to David when he sees him.
Yeah.
Who built him and created him in the image of his son.
Huh. Funny.
So I was like, yeah, definitely struck by, the father and son motif of like building at least in the son's image. But talking about David, he wanted to see what happened because his belief was that humans are the only beings on the earth that put together plans to follow their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole idea of like, where would that lead him? Where would that go? And that is kind of like that, spiritual journey, whatever that might be for somebody.
Yeah, for, say, other people like me, it was a Christian spiritual
Sure.
journey, but other people, it's just a spiritual journey.
Yes.
Spiritual does not equal Christian.
Totally.
So.
Yes, exactly. And so it was definitely, and the idea at the end when these alien creatures or whatever
Mm-hmm.
give him kind of a choice at the end of, you can have this dream you've been working towards, but you can have it for one day, and that's it. And he's like, that sounds great.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I
what
can
if
do
it's
that.
a one day as if it was in...
Yes.
Because again, if you're a fan of the Bible, one day was not a 24-hour period. That's an agrarian calendar, whatever
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, all allegory.
Right.
Yeah, so it's anyway, it was really, really cool seeing that, like, really deep questions. I can see that it would be a good.
I gotta find that paper, man.
You gotta find it. The last thing I put together, and we may talk more, but at least for the top 5 for me was, Haley Joel Osment came on the scene with The Sixth Sense
Mm-hmm.
and was up for
supporting
actor, and he was actually up against Jude Law for something.
No, yeah, but he lost to Michael Caine.
Yeah, but Jude Law was up that year, I think.
Oh yeah, for Talented Mr. Ripley, probably.
Maybe.
But then, because that's the year. Then my was because Tom Cruise should have won that year
Cruise.
for Magnolia.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Should have. But Haley Joel Osment is really well known for obviously Sixth Sense, and then did this and maybe a few of it, but like definitely kind
Secondhand
of faded out.
Lions,
and then has come kind of
He's been
reemerged
around, yeah.
and come back. I think, but holy cow, he is good.
Yeah.
So unbelievably good at like 10 years old or whatever he
Mhm.
must have been at this movie. At
Mhm.
the robotic, like, good luck finding him ever blinking in this movie. Like, I was watching it because I'm like, is he not blinking? Like, everybody else is kind of blinking. And he is just staring at things and has the mannerisms, which I don't know how you can do that as, like, a little kid to get the complexity of this and the connection and the drive to be programmed this way to find that. And then he's creepy at times, not because he's designed to be creepy. It's just
and not because he's bad.
No, it's
Like-
just it'd be jarring,
Right.
to have this kid, like, this thing come out of nowhere and like have to learn, but be 8 or whatever it is might be in the movie. So yeah, he is so unbelievably good in this movie that I remember he was great in Sixth Sense, but this was another level for me of just solidifying he was a fan. I haven't seen much of him like as he's gotten older, but he was so good in this. So like, and it's really again a huge risk for any. We talked about with Harry Potter. I mean, a huge franchise, 8 movies eventually to saddle on with young kids.
Mm-hmm.
But this is 2.5 hours of a really complex movie to put on the shoulders of a young kid.
Yeah.
And Spielberg, I think, is probably arguably the best director at working with kids.
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
terms of track record, like,
yeah,
at least one of the top 5. But this is probably one of his best working with a kid who carries the movie. He's just unbelievable.
But he does
So
it in
good.
such a way that is like it's a grown-up performance from a kid.
Yes.
Because for the first half of the movie, he seems to have this awe on his face.
Totally.
Like just like, what is happening around me and all this other stuff. And then he starts obviously learning what the real world is.
Yes.
And he starts knowing my goal is now only to get home to mom or whatever. And that's what it is. But then to jump between that look or a look of almost stupidity. Sometimes he almost looks stupid.
Yes.
And I think that's almost looks like it's obviously on purpose.
Yes.
And then he jumps to a real reaction to something.
Yes.
Because it's going against what he wants.
Yes.
It's
like the imprinting scene when she says the words.
Yep.
And you can see the shift in his face.
Yep.
That he is now imprinted.
Who teaches a kid that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like he goes from this very robotic performance, understandably, to then having this even a small bit of emotion come through and imprint and like comes out of the chair and hugs her. And his face, I was just like, who the hell is this kid?
I know.
He's fantastic.
I know.
So good. Anyway,
yep.
Yes.
Yeah, there are definitely things that we can talk about. Will probably come up as we go. It is. I'm so pleased that it was exactly what I remember it. It's that there's so many existential questions and layers and philosophical questions and spiritual questions that come from it, whether intentionally or unintentionally.
Yeah.
I was so thoroughly impressed with this movie again.
Yeah, and the tone definitely felt at times like you could see, Spielberg kind of rewriting what Kubrick was possibly going for. Like, it didn't feel at times like it was.
I read an interview about this actually, which said, Spielberg said, like, people assume that the lighthearted stuff was Spielberg and the dark stuff was Kubrick. It's actually the reverse. The original screenplay was mostly Kubrick had worked on a lot of the stuff with Teddy and a lot of stuff with the home and something like. But the darkest elements actually came from Spielberg in this movie.
What?
And he went out of his it was like this idea of saying
maybe
it was Spielberg's interpretation of what Kubrick would have done, but it was not Spielbergian in a lighthearted fair standpoint.
Okay, all right.
But yeah,
because the Flesh Fair and
that was him.
Rouge City, that
was
feels
all
like
Spielberg.
All right, okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah, I was too, because I thought that too, and he actually went out of his way in an interview to be like, no, people need to understand
that's me.
That was actually me, right? Which is probably why Kubrick wanted him to direct it. Kubrick always wanted Spielberg to direct this film.
Oh, gotcha.
Like, it was never going to be... Kubrick did not want to direct it.
I thought he was going to take on this after Eyes Wide Shut.
He took it on after it, but that's because Kubrick had died.
Sure.
But Kubrick had been asking Spielberg to direct this for quite some time.
Huh.
Even though it was his idea. He thought, because of the fairy tale aspect and that kind of stuff, it was more... It would be in better hands with Spielberg, but...
Gotcha.
Spielberg brought in a lot of this.
All right.
So...
All right.
Research.
Kudos to you.
I think we can keep going. So, but we'll move on. We've got I guess that naturally segue into our next segment, which is Drinking Buddies, the sequel.
Let's get weird.
Where we recap our beers and provide you with our expert ratings and really just what we like or don't like, as usual. I thought we had some pretty decent ones this week. Tim, what do we got?
We had Fulton's IPA to start with. Just a new standard IPA. It was a 4.25 for me. I liked that it was a very unassuming throwback style, if you will. The industry has kind of gotten crazy with additives, and this was just very, very solid. We talked a little bit about it kind of tasting like Stone's IPA.
To a certain extent,
it didn't have like the West Coast kind of hoppiness to it, but it was
simple.
But it did taste like Fulton, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. It was really good.
Yeah, I had a 4, but probably would be closer to a 4.25 as far as like if I had to be. I'm not at a 4. I'm probably closer. For that reason is and we'll get to that on the next beer. I'm super, super tired of some of these breweries just shoving a bunch of shit in here. And giving me 10 different styles of hops, and they all taste the same, and they all taste... It's just like, knock it off. So, I think there's something... I had Badger Hill Traders IPA on one of the more recent ones, and then 300 was another one.
Yes.
They just give me a good beer, man.
Yep.
I don't need it to be...
Something simple.
Right. I don't need it to be some ridiculous, concoction of a bunch of stuff. So, I had a 4, but better than a 4.
Yes, I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
speaking of lots of different hops to go with, then we had Black Stack Brewing out of Minneapolis. Their triple dry hopped double IPA dad jokes, specifically with Citra Mosaic, Cashmere, and Vic Secret.
Vic Secret.
There it is.
Yeah.
So I'm really torn on this. Actually, I stand corrected. Sorry, St. Paul, Minnesota. I wonder if like Black Stack cornered the market somehow on hops. Like what their vendor is, because apparently every beer they produce now is like double or triple dry hop. Like they just are unloading truckloads of hops into these beers, and the ones I've had don't taste different. Like it feels in some way.
All the same.
We joked with Topping Goliath the one time long ago. Like they're just taking the same can and just relabeling it, and naming it different.
Drecker's gotten that way too.
And so it was a 3.5 for me, because I still like the style. It was fine. I don't know. Maybe I'm just I struggle with this, but I can't taste the difference between a double dry hop and a triple dry hop. Like I've even read somewhere that's quadruple. At that point, it's like just becoming noise to me. And actually, I couldn't drink the 16 ounces. I had to stop at like maybe 12. Like
yeah, I got rid of it.
It was too much. Yeah.
Yeah,
so 3.5.
I had a 3.75 and it kind of dropped to 3.5 once I couldn't finish it.
Yeah.
Like it was totally drinkable and it was fine.
Yep.
But you got to buy a 4-pack and you're just, I don't know. It's
all these tall boys. And it's like, I don't want that.
Their beers tasting, they have some great beers.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Local 755 is a good beer.
Yes.
But everything seems to be double versions of that same beer. And I'm not impressed with Black Stack.
No.
So yeah, I'm on 3.5 of that as well.
Yeah, I like them, but I don't seek them out.
Nope.
If it hadn't been the dad joke thing,
we wouldn't have had it.
Would not have had it.
Yep.
Then we had War Pigs out of Illinois, I think. Their Bouffant Jellyfish, American Sour Ale with passion fruit and pink guava. I challenge you to taste the passion fruit in this. It was 3.75 for me. For sour, the guava came through. It's pretty good. It wasn't too overwhelming. It was pretty good. But same thing. These come in tall boys. I can't finish a sour of 16 ounces. Like it just eventually grows like, nah, can't do anymore. So I had to stop before I finished it. But yeah, it was 3.75.
Yeah, I had a 4 out of 5.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's
fine.
Yeah. It was drinkable sour. It's fine.
Yep.
But it wasn't like super. I had a sour at a different place locally recently that I'm not going to mention because it was good, but like way, way, way too tart and over the top. And it was like, ugh. It was a palatable sour with a good flavor. So I was like, that's 4 out of 5.
Yeah. Then we finished with Lupulin Brewing out of Big Lake, Minnesota. Their Citradiculous Double India Pale Ale. I think obviously just a single hopped Citra.
Here we go. Finally a single hop.
It was 4.25.
Yeah.
For me. It's this was quite tasty. I'm still working on it as we're talking, but it definitely is not one that I felt like maybe
I down mine faster than yours, and you started before me.
You like took credits.
There you go.
What have you been? Wow.
Yeah.
Here I am like crying in the microphone as you're like sipping your beer. Anyway,
I cried during the movie like a man does.
That's true. And I'm processing. Thank you. Again, no pun intended. 4.25 for me.
I had a 3.75 when I first tasted it.
Sure.
I was like, what is happening here? I didn't really like it. And it got better and better and better. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm at a 4 or 4.25 as well. And I finished mine a lot faster than yours. Yeah. So it's good. It's been a while since I've enjoyed something from Lupulin that's new.
Yeah.
And this is a new one from them. So I was actually like, this is pleasant. I love Citra hops, and it's refreshing to finally have a single hop.
Yeah.
So that's good. I had a 4. But I bet if I cracked another one, it might move up to a 4.25. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll test that theory.
Yeah.
So
we'll see how that goes. Cool. Yeah, it's good. Those Drinking Buddies.
Perfect. Well, Drinking Buddies, the sequel. So this actually brings us to Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part 2.
I can't walk. They've tied my shoelaces together.
Where Tim and I offer up maybe a hot take that might not have been there 2 decades ago. Or just something else on our list that we want to discuss. Do you have a hot take you really want to discuss?
I mean, I don't know if I really want to, but like, I'm not like chomping at the bit. But one thing that
I am, and so I'll go second so that we can discuss.
You are very excited. I'm excited for that. We talked about the Turing test before about kind of these ideas around, robotics, artificial intelligence, that kind of thing. the premise of the, what they call the uncanny valley, where we can disassociate ourselves enough from a mechanical being type of thing if it looks unhuman-like. But when it becomes very human-like, it becomes this off-putting, jarring type of thing. And so I think this movie probably is one of the best versions of that premise, fleshes it out. Again, no pun intended. And that, to me, was in the Flesh Fair. That I don't remember when I first saw it, but seeing it again, where the compassion that people have, especially one of the producers of it, whose daughter comes up and said, "There's a boy in the cage." And he's like, "What?" And he approaches it not as like it's a boy, but he's amazed at like, "Oh my gosh, look at what they've done. Like, this is incredible, but we can't have him go out there and be killed like the other ones, because people are going to lose their minds." And then Brendan Gleeson's character is like, "Whatever," bring him out and straps him in. And the audience does revolt. They're like, "No, it's a real boy." Like, the mechs don't cry or plea for their survival type of thing.
Right. Or even if it isn't real, I'm not willing to kill this thing that
looks
can
like a
act
boy.
real.
Yes. Right. Like, and so that to me was a great version of this kind of theory put into, I guess, like visual form of practice, that, that uncanny valley, that idea that if it's so human-like, we will start to be connecting to it and like that kind of thing. So the only time I remember seeing this kind of played out really well was even more recent with Blade Runner 2049, or more recent one, where it really good, like it's a computer program, like a hologram that you start to be compelled by. So this, however, with that type of premise, I love that it put into practice the kind of philosophical idea around what are you willing to destroy if it doesn't look like a human. But this comes in, it's like people's reactions are totally different.
Yeah.
So
it's what iRobot actually did a pretty good job at.
Yes.
But not quite all the way, because it wasn't humanity based.
Yes.
But no, there are some other examples out there that it's interesting.
Yeah. I was struck by that watching it, the reaction of the audience who's like out for synthetic blood is off put by that. They said, no, they can't do that. So it was a bridge too far. So anyway, it was cool. Yeah.
I will say this from a, not necessarily an emotional connection standpoint, but a mental one, although both of us cried.
Yep.
But really from a mental standpoint, I think this is a modern masterpiece of a film. I think if 20 years has gone by and both of us have probably deeper reactions than we did before.
Totally.
Then I loved it the first time around.
Sure.
And I loved it the second, and then now.
Yep.
Because I saw it multiple times then. I'm just saying, as movies go on, you get more and more into the idea of, it's why I think Minority Report is a modern masterpiece. Because as we get closer and closer to this, we're going to have to answer this question. And of the Uncanny Valley, or of what do we, or you loved Her, the movie.
Oh, God.
The idea of loving AI as much as humans, we have to answer this question.
Yes.
And this movie is substantially before that.
Totally.
I mean, and so was, other movies like 2001 and that kind of stuff. But not only do the visuals still hold up for 20 years.
Yes.
The story becomes more fleshed out. There's your pun.
There's our pun.
20 years later.
Yes.
And I think to me, from a mental standpoint, from an actual purely social standpoint, social commentary standpoint, from a, it's an absolute gem of a movie, and I would say it's a top 5 Spielberg movie potentially. I'd have to argue this.
Ooh.
Because there's two different standpoints. Jurassic Park is entertainment, and this is a film. Like there's two. I'm not saying
totally.
You get into different arguments there, but you can, if you were to ask me from a purely sort of like filmmaking standpoint, story standpoint, not from an entertainment value.
No, I get it.
Because I will watch Jurassic Park every day of the rest of my life, and I'd be fine with that movie. Yes. But yeah, it asks a shit ton of questions. It doesn't answer them.
No.
It does answer some, but it puts the onus on you to answer these questions. So from a mental standpoint, this is easily one of, I think, his deepest movies when it comes to asking these questions and letting you answer them. And now 20 years later, we still haven't answered them, and yet all of those questions are as on point as they were back then, if not more. And we've talked about the flesh for a bunch, and it's the same idea, both
Yes.
with humans and inhuman things.
Yes.
So I was struck by, as I was watching it, how passionate I was towards defending this film.
Sure.
In that, you know, in my research, we had talked about the number of reviewers that maybe didn't like it the first time around. Ebert, what was Ebert's review again? It was 3 out of 4?
3 out of 4 stars.
Yeah.
Yep.
In
A movie
2000,
both
in
wonderful
2011,
and maddening. Yeah.
when they were talking about their best movies of the 2010s, he
Yeah.
gave it 4 out of 4. He gave it a perfect score.
Exactly. Yes.
As time went on,
Yes.
and as technology caught up to the idea, because
Yes.
again, chicken and the egg syndrome, sci-fi movies and writing
Sure.
often develop sci-fi in reality.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he gave it a perfect score and called it one of the best movies of the 2000 or the aughts.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
You know, and you're like, even Roger Ebert
Big man Raj.
comes back 10 years later and is like, no, this is a 4 out of 4. His first one was even better as time went on. And if you were around now, I would imagine same thing. And add another 10 years on that, and I wonder if he would even be more looking at that.
When you think about...
So, modern masterpiece is my sort of like hot take on this.
I like that. I'll come back to it. I think I'll confirm it. I think about 30 years ago, Cameron released Terminator 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously like one of the darkest takes on like artificial intelligence.
Yeah. And yet,
Skynet becomes
anyone
self-aware.
want to question if Skynet's going to be real in the next X amount of time? Because it's coming.
It's kind of a sad joke that I make people at work like, until Skynet becomes aware, we're okay.
Yeah.
But
it's the same with the zombie apocalypse. They keep trying to... somebody keeps trying to develop a flesh-eating disease. And you're like, can we just stop this, please?
Exactly. We've seen the
Yeah,
cautionary
it's gonna
tales.
happen.
But this is such a great take on that type of thing, too, is like, humanity will have to grapple with that question of like ethics and where you have kind of these boundaries of AI, and even just the fact that it was called AI. I remember the time being like, what? This is kind of a hokey title, and the focus. But
I think it's a deep title.
I mean,
who has the artificial intelligence? David or humans? Because David has a real understanding of what love is, and yet humans tend to be the ones who are messing with it.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So, but I think that's why it comes back to your point of like, we're still talking about a movie like The Terminator and T2. Of course, it had all these different spins off or spin off, which are not so good. But this one, still, I was hoping it would hold up.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like I did not have many strong memories. I mean, I remembered much of it, but was very moved by it, and it's definitely one that I think like Spielberg is known for his crowd pleasing stuff, and he's such a great entertainer. But when he really puts it hard into something like this, or like Schindler's List, it's not on that same level, I won't say, but it is
totally different movie.
Something that he clearly had a passion for and did a great job. That the masterpiece.
Same.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
Yeah.
It held up.
Well, not only hold up, it was better than what you even would remember.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, like, for me, watching it, and I had sort of this, like, experience and understanding, it's different for me, but it's good to see that it not only held up for me, but it sort of, like, cemented what I've always sort of said about it.
Yes.
But I never really wanted to go back and rewatch it.
Yes.
Without, like, because you kind of go, if I rewatch it by myself and it doesn't hold up, a la Zoolander, like,
yes.
Oh man, I've recommended this movie to, but I wouldn't recommend this movie to a lot of people.
No,
you got to go into this knowing what you're getting into.
Yes,
it's one of those movies.
But I think of from a masterpiece standpoint, like how it can hit you differently at different points in your life.
Yeah,
like
the themes in this movie are deep, and they're not deep in a like overblown, I'm gonna just put it in your face standpoint.
Yes.
Like, David doesn't ask a question, why are they killing all of us? Or some weird thing. He just watches the world happen.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
So our final segment then, as always, is Quiz Show.
The exciting quiz program, 21.
Where we search for fun, quirky, or even difficult trivia nuggets throughout our research for our next film and attempt to stump each other. I think this is the first time you have one and I have two.
Yes.
Okay. do you want me to go first, even though I have two, or do you want to go first in case I steal one of yours, and then that way?
Oh, let's do that.
You know what I'm saying? Because then you're just out of luck.
Then I'm like, I got nothing.
Oh, hang on, I gotta consult Google. Let's pause. So you can go first.
The last time that Spielberg had a writing credit was in 1982.
Mm-hmm.
Can you name that paranormal film?
I can. It's Poltergeist.
Nice.
Because it's one of my two, and I'm glad we did this.
I'm so glad you asked that. Good call. Yeah.
He's only got 3 screenplay credits, technically.
Yeah. The 3? Okay, this one, that, and then...
Close Encounters.
Yes,
right, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So there we go. Good. So we both have one.
I like that.
All right, so Stanley Kubrick began working on this film in 1983.
Holy cow.
Yes, but abandoned it many times over the course of the next decade due to his belief that technology was nowhere close to what he needed for the visuals. Duh.
Makes sense.
Similar to, say, like Cameron and Avatar.
Yeah.
He had that. That is until he saw a film that finally suggested that it was becoming more possible to find his vision on the screen. What 1993 sci-fi classic inspired Kubrick to believe again that this could happen?
Please say Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, when he saw Jurassic Park, he called up Spielberg, and they had already talked about it, but he was like, and then he also met with the head of visuals for that movie and was like, what can we do with this?
Interesting.
Yeah, so Kubrick was inspired by Jurassic Park.
That's really cool. I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the blend of practical.
He'd been doing it for
CGI
10 years.
Like, wow.
And he came up with this idea in 83. And it was a short story in like 1970 something. This is based on a short story.
It's like a Philip K. Dick story or something
Not
like that.
quite.
Like,
I don't know if it's Philip K. Dick. It's
when they sleep?
Aldous. It's like Ralph Aldous, I think, is who wrote it originally.
Huh.
No, because what you're talking about is do electronic robots,
yes.
or do electronic sheep. No, do robots stream? That's AI. That was iRobot. That was Philip K. Dick.
Gotcha. Yes.
But it was like Ralph Aldous or something. That was a short story. I can't remember the name of it. I'm not gonna look it up.
I like that.
Any final thoughts then on AI before we shut her down on what will be our longest podcast so far?
Dude, this was a great Father's Day for enjoying this, and it's got some really deep and profound themes that I did not think were going to hold up. So I'm so pleasantly surprised. Loved it.
My last 2 thoughts I guess I have on my thing was, one, the single tear was really interesting with David towards the end, as he had this, like, that was interesting.
Yes.
Good, the single tear comes up. I didn't realize the robots were able to cry.
Yeah.
So maybe he is a real boy at the end.
And he doesn't blink when he cries.
No.
How's that possible?
Anyway, because he's awesome.
He's so good.
But the last thing I had, which was, if Terrence Malick had directed this film, it would have been up for 10 Oscars.
I totally agree. Yes. If this came up like, Tree of Life crap, like,
right.
What an awful movie. But I agree.
Thin Red Line.
Yes.
If Terrence Malick had done this,
yes.
It would have been this like amazing existential, people like, oh, he's going to the depths, the blobbity blee, whatever. But because Spielberg did it,
yes. Absolutely.
Everyone assumed it would be this like entertaining crowd pleaser.
Yep.
Whereas when Malick comes in, you got to like buckle in for whatever garbage I'm supposed to watch.
Yes.
And like I'm supposed to overthink it and pretend that I can even know what this guy is thinking at the time. It would be up for 10 Oscars. It would just be like, that is a real thing where who makes it becomes your expectations.
Yes.
And I think I just think if Terrence Malick did this, everyone would have called it an absolute masterpiece at the time.
Yes. Well, it's like we talked about like David Fincher if he had made The Prisoners.
Yeah.
Or Prisoners instead of Denis Villeneuve. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
Denis,
like,
which now that everyone loves him,
yes,
they would love that movie.
Yes.
But at the time, I agree.
Yeah.
That was such a Fincher. Oh, great movie.
Yes. Anyway, I like that. That's a good thought. That's
so
let's go in and
move on. Our next episode will be another about face, really. And we will find ourselves in the fascinating world of romantic comedies.
Oh.
No James Marsden in this one. Sorry, Tim. With Legally Blonde.
Oh, Luke Wilson. I got that.
And coming up after this, we will be recording our happy hour about A Knight's Tale, starring Heath Ledger. Which actually brings us to the end of our episode. We want to say thanks for taking some time to listen and for clicking that like or subscribe button on your devices. Follow us on Twitter at years_beers and on Facebook. Or head to 20years4beers.com. This deep dive has been 20 Years, 4 Beers. My name is Steve.
I'm Tim.
And thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Blobbity blee. Whatever. Guava.